Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India. Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. In this session we are going to study about the role of human resource management in corporate sustainability and corporate social responsibility. After attending this session you should be able to recognize the role of HRM function in corporate sustainability. You should be able to recognize the role of HRM function in the CSR as well. In this session we are going to discuss, and which you should also be able to distinguish, the economic, social and ecological aspects of sustainable HRM. In order to understand the role of HRM in the sustainable development and corporate social responsibility, we must understand the grand challenges this whole world is facing. These grand challenges are related to economics, social and environmental problems. For example, climate change, poverty and hunger, growing economic insecurity, restricted access to education to a large portion of population, all these are the grand challenges. In the international level, at the international political landscape also we are looking at a rise of the anti-globalization sentiments. At one point of time globalization was pursued and conveyed as a panacea to all the problems, but now the negative aspects of the globalization is coming up, and as a result many societies and countries are more and more skeptical about it. So they are rising against it. In many parts of the world, due to political conflicts turning into the war or the civil war kind of situation, a inflow of migrants and refugee is happening in many parts of the world. Xenophobic backlash is being observed in many countries. China is also acting as a superpower and exercising and trying to exercise the hegemony all across different parts of the world. Terrorism on the name of religion has become very prominent threat in the current times. So we can see at the international political landscape many such challenges are emerging, have emerged, and they are bound to impact how as a civilization we address the grand challenges in front of us, how business organizations play role in addressing those challenges, and how HRM function can impact those grand challenges on the face of these major international features, and how HRM respond to the requirement of the time on the face of this situation. Sustainable development is expressed in terms of 17 sustainable development goals. These were adopted by all the members of the UN. These goals are related to reducing poverty, hunger, providing good health, well-being, providing good education, ensuring gender equality, making the clean water and sanitation available to all the people across the world, making the clean energy affordable, providing decent work and economic growth to the world population, facilitating industry, innovation and infrastructure, reducing inequality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, peace and justice and having strong institutions, partnership for the goals, life and life on land, life below water, climate action. These are the sustainability goals, 7 sustainability goals which are adopted by all the countries of the world. Corporations naturally have to play a very important role in achieving these goals. Corporations are not only business entities, but they are also increasingly recognized as agents for social change, and we see growing number of partnership between corporations and governments to address many of such challenges. There is an emergence of dedicated corporate sustainability or corporate social responsibility departments in many large companies. There is a proliferation of voluntary self-regulatory codes like UN Global Code, like green business related codes, like supply chain related, the sustainability of the supply chain related codes, use of the forest material, there are codes related to that. So, codes related to pollution, codes related to the efficiency of the vehicle. There are many professional organizations which are developing codes of the best practices, of the standard of their procedures voluntarily. So, they are not waiting for governments to decide and come up with the regulation about certain control and certain standards of process, but they are coming up there with their own goals, with their coming up their own codes. And so, that is what we are seeing all across the world. Profit with purpose is recognized, is being talked about in the corporate world. We discussed some bit of it in a session on humanistic management, which that was part of the session on the positive employee relationship. Goal of creating shared value, not only developing value, not only developing economic value for the shareholders, but creating wealth for all the stakeholders. It is accepted more and more as a gold standard for business. Pursuing triple bottom line, that means that constantly looking at the impact of business on not only the bottom line, which is the profitability of the organization, which is the bottom line related to prosperity of the company, looking at the impact of all those processes on people and planet. That has also become a norm, that is also becoming a norm, and more corporations, big and small both, are awakening to this. Not only awakening, but they are integrating these things in their measurements, in their performance tracking, and naturally in their way of doing business. So, here is the quote by Paul Polman, the ex-CEO of Unilever. He said that we now have the opportunity to eradicate poverty and deal with the issue of climate change. What bigger opportunity do you want to see? Companies make up 60% of the global economy. If they do not play an active part, how can we solve these crises? So, there is a greater awakening that corporations need to pitch in to address the grand challenges this world is facing, and those grand challenges are very well captured in the sustainability goal adopted by all the country members of the UNO. In that context, we need to understand the role of HRM. So, sustainable HRM, we hear about it, it can be of substantive and of symbolic nature. It is called substantive when the firm's sustainability effort and CSR activities are integrated in their processes and they are serving the cause of the business. Whereas research also point out that business as usual tendencies, decoupling strategies or greenwashing, that is demonstrating some symbolic acts here and there about the social and environmental responsibility while leaving the core business untouched, that is what we call symbolic sustainable HRM. So, what we are going to discuss in this session are the substantive sustainable HRM practices. Sustainable HRM is defined as the adoption of HRM strategies and practices that enable the achievement of financial, social and ecological goals with an impact inside and outside of the organization and over a long term time horizon. This definition is taken from the paper of Tall, Brewster and colleague. In fact, a lot of slides and many concepts in this lecture are being taken from this research paper. Why HRM should be held responsible, or why HRM should bother about corporate sustainability and corporate social responsibility, which are represented, and we will be using this term in the rest of the session with CS and CSR, precisely for the two reasons. First, because CS and CSR has implication for HRM, so they are going to impact the function of HR, so that is why HR should also bother about them. And second, because CS and CSR strategies both have internal as well as external element to it, and HR also has external and internal element to it. So, HRM need to bother about it, HRM need to be conscious of it. What are the internal elements? Internal elements are for the HR, the internal element is about the way people within organizations are treated, and external element for HR is the need and expectation of the external stakeholders. HRM can contribute to both the goals by fostering the employee commitment towards CS and CSR, by integrating the CS and CSR principles into existing HRM processes and creating stakeholder alignment, ensuring the smooth communication and expectations sharing, as well as helping in fulfilling the expectations of the external and internal stakeholders. If we look at the strategic HRM literature, and strategic HRM has been the major foundation, the major theoretical foundation of this course as well, and CS and CSR helps to understand the limitation of this theoretical foundation, is that that is the largest kind of area of HRM research, and SHRM has been the preoccupation of SHRM has been to examine the firm performance link, especially in the form of, or in terms of the high performance work practices. So, major premise of SHRM research is about the mutual gain perspective, which is based on the assumption that employees and employer both benefit from the high performance work practices. So, there is a need to develop the high performance work practices in the business organizations because it is mutually beneficial. However, in last few years it is becoming clear that overall reality is changing. So, this unitarist framing of HRM as inherently consensual and mutually beneficial to employer and employee is a kind of a limiting view. It is limited because in this view concern for the other stakeholders is not sufficiently pronounced. So, as a result of this limitation, a multidimensional performance construct is evolving, and that is replacing the only employer employee mutual beneficial relationship perspective. This recognition about the multidimensional performance construct is about the adaptation of a perspective of performance which is beyond shareholder value maximization, and which considers the broader array of criteria that includes organizational effectiveness, individual well-being and social welfare. So, the new broader social contract between business and society is emerging. In context of that, HRM has to gear up, HRM has to modify itself, and that is why there is need to focus on the CS and CSR aspect of HRM. You might remember we discussed the humanistic management model in the session on positive relationship between employer and employees. In the humanistic management model, we looked at not shareholder value alone, but dignity and well-being as the goal of the business corporations. And for achieving these twin goals, corporations or business organizations have to take care of not only the drive for acquisition and drive for the economic gains, but they also have to take care of the drive for bonding and drive for seeking the meaning and purpose of the people, of their employee in the larger scheme of existence. So, basically humanistic management also talks about moving away from the maximization perspective to optimization perspective, promotion of the practical wisdom which looks about the balancing the economic, social and spiritual needs of the entity, the corporate entity of the people. So, the humanistic management perspective also talks about moving away from the maximization perspective to the balancing of the needs perspective, which takes into account not only of the economic needs, but also the spiritual and social needs of the members of the organization and of the society. How HRM activities can drive CS and CSR? On the surface we can look at many HR functions which can drive the CS and CSR agenda through HRM. So, on the surface we can quickly see what are some of the HRM practices which can impact the CS and CSR. First is the value based recruitment and selection. So, HRM can ensure that people who enter the organization are having the right perspective about the CS and CSR. It can infuse the values and attitude related to CS and CSR in the induction program. They can design the training and development processes which takes into account of the CS and CSR. They can look at the talent management which is about identifying, classifying and developing the talent in the organization to achieve their strategically important objective. In the talent management process, HRM can take into account the CS and CSR goals. In the performance management, so performance management can and should move from totally shareholder perspective to stakeholder perspective, and that will not happen without having the performance indicators related to the stakeholder perspective incorporated in the performance management system. Incentive systems can be designed by HRM which takes into account of the CS and CSR. In turn, if HRM takes care of the CS and CSR values, it will help HRM as well in many different ways. First of all, it helps in creating the strong employer brand. that in turn helps HRM to attract and retain the talent. It informs the selection process, so it makes the selection process more principle centric, which ensures inclusion and equal opportunity in the selection process. Introducing the standards of decent work. Now when CS and CSR is the concern of HRM, HRM has got the guideline, HRM has got the principles and indicators on which it can more objectively define the standards of decent work. Defining CS and CSR principle consistent with the strategic business direction is possible only if HRM is integrated and HRM is informed and inspired by the ideals of CS and CSR. It helps in directing the incentives and rewarding employees. It can help HR in offering the company sponsored volunteerism and service learning programs. So we can see that HRM and the CS and CSR agenda are not at the contradiction to each other. In fact, it can be mutually enhancing, enriching for the corporations, HRM and the overall development agenda which is aimed at addressing the grand challenge this planet is facing or the human race is facing, that is a better way of expression. SHRM, which is a body of the HR professionals, they conducted the survey with 700 corporate CSR and HRM professionals in USA, and what they found was that these things which we discussed in the previous slide are actually recognized by the CSR and HRM professionals. So 89% of the people, the respondents think that achieving HRM goals such as attracting top talent is possible, it is helped by CS and CSR agenda adopted if HR adopt the CS and CSR agenda. Adoption of the CS and CSR agenda by HR improves the employee retention by 85%, that is a very significant and big number. It also helps in developing organizations leadership. So these are some of the top concerns of the corporations, these are the top concerns of the HR function, and all these are greatly influenced, all these are supported if HR integrate the CS and CSR agenda in its functioning. There are number of trends which are predicted to foster this connection. So in the years to come we are going to look at more and more integration of CS and CSR in the HRM process and HRM function. You can consider this a new paradigm in the HRM. If the first paradigm was more of a personal management, administration related activities of the HR function, if the second paradigm was about the strategic orientation of the HR, the third paradigm is going to be, and it is emerging as the sustainability procedure, as the sustainability related agenda for the HRM function. That is in line with, and that is very natural, because the desire of the millennials and post millennials. You might remember the previous session where we discussed who are these millennials and post millennials and what are the major characteristics of these generations. This generation or these generations are more concerned about these values, and they wish these values to be integrated in their working, in their professional life. So that is why this trend is going to be only strengthened in years to come. The resulting need for companies to achieve employer differentiation and position themselves as employer of choice, that also is found to be deeply connected with HRM CSR integration. There is a pressure from the active stakeholders, active shareholders to link the executive compensation scheme to the company's CS and CSR performance to generate the long term value. Only looking at the shareholder value is also a kind of value, but it is a short term value. Long term value generation has to be in the form of social gains as well, and that can be taken seriously by the leadership only if their compensation is also linked to that, and that demand is not, and that is being demanded, that need is being pointed out by the very active groups of the shareholders as well. So, because of these three factors, role of HRM or integration of HRM with CS and CSR is going to only enhance in next few years. But what is the situation? If we look at the CSR agenda, if we look at the decisions, predominant decisions being made related to the CS and CSR, what we find is that HRM is not playing significant role in decision making about CS and CSR related matter. So, who are influencing the decisions related to CS and CSR? Organizational leadership, C-suite, whom we call, or board of directors. Legal department is making the CS and CSR as a prominent concern for the business. Public relation is making the organizations aware of the importance of these issues, and as a result organizations are taking into account these factors. Sales department, they are influencing business organizations to take up the CS and CSR cause. Marketing department is taking the CS and CSR cause and asking their organizations to take the CS and CSR related agenda more carefully, because that is because of the many reasons which we just discussed. It is not HRM which is championing the CS and CSR agenda in the organization. And why it is so? It is so because we discussed in the previous slide that predominant paradigm of HRM has been about the strategic HRM, and that strategic HRM is predominantly based on the premise of the mutual benefit of the employer employee, and on this, while operating on the mutual benefit proposition, the concern for other stakeholders is not properly taken into account. So, HRM has to really gear up to be influencer in the CS and CSR agenda. How it can be done, that is what we are going to look at in the next part of this session. So, before we discuss the CS and CSR and how it can be integrated in the HRM, I would like to mention about two examples. First example is of IBM, the famous IBM company. It is an example of the substantive CSR engagement in the IBM's corporate service corps. So, this is a Peace Corp, they call it Peace Corp, it operates across the company, and it was established in 2008. It has spent 3,000 employees in over 275 teams to nearly 40 countries for 1 month service assignment, where they co-create social innovations together with NGOs, social enterprises and government agencies. So, IBM has not only made the 1 day social service compulsory as a tick mark, as a basic requirement to fulfill the requirement to look more responsible. No, large number of people have spent significant amount of time with the NGOs, social enterprises, government agencies to help them to make their systems and processes more robust. And there are research studies which are suggesting that if the well qualified interns, well qualified volunteers like these work with the NGOs and the government agencies, actually this has positive impact on the functioning of those agencies and those organizations. My second example is of the Novo Nordisk, that is a healthcare related company which is majorly into the diabetes management. In the beginning of this 21st century, they came up with this Novo way of management, that was actually the result of a crisis, but thanks to that crisis they looked at their business, they looked at their overall process and systems holistically, and this organization came up with the Novo way of management. The Novo way of management has 4 pillars. These are extensively reporting on the triple bottom line, which we just discussed, continuously doing organizational audit on all these 3 bottom lines, facilitation of the different departments and people to meet the goals on all 3 bottom lines, and having a robust succession management. The key theme of the functioning in the Novo way of management is openness, continuous learning and dialogue. So, they ensured the openness in the organization so that the weak signals are being picked up, are being pointed out comfortably by the people on the front line, or basic assumptions about the business decisions are being comfortably questioned by the different people in the organization, as a result of which organization can choose the best way which is in the best interest of all the stakeholders. So, there are 2 examples we can look at how the Novo way of management gets implemented on the shop floor at the organizational level. Number 1 example, every employee is expected to spend at least 1 day in a year with someone connected to diabetes. So, be the patient, caretaker, healthcare, that sensitize them about their needs, and after spending even this much time, employees come up with some insights, some ideas about how they can improve their service, to these people. Second example is non-financial performance base of the impact on the triple bottom line. So, the senior managers not only evaluated on the financial parameters like profitability and all other financial parameters, they are also evaluated in terms of the non-financial parameters like job creation, ability to manage environmental impact, optimizing the resource efficiency, social impact related to the well-being of the employee, well-being of the patients or communities. These are integrated in the performance management system of the senior managers. So, this is one example, this is the way how substantive HRM, the substantive role of HRM towards CS and CSR look like. Now, we will look at how this can be accomplished. So, there are 3 ways through which CS and CSR can be integrated with HRM. First is economic domain of sustainable HRM. In the economic domain, the most prominent activity or process which can be taken up by HRM is talent management, because talent management is having direct impact on the organizational performance. How companies can integrate the CSR into the talent management? First step is through corporate volunteering programs. Corporate volunteering programs make people sensitive, make people aware of the concern of the different stakeholders, and that helps them to develop more holistic business solutions. It avoids the short termism. Whenever CSR is integrated in the talent management process, the talent has to be evaluated beyond the short termism. They have to take into account the long term objectives. That helps in pursuing the sustainable performance and sustainability agenda, and that also helps in investment in the human capital. So, integration of the talent management practices with the CS and CSR is done when long term perspective is taken about the performance management system. More sustainable and purpose driven approach of talent management helps developing talent, helps developing more holistic leadership, more compassionate and sensitive leadership that has positive impact not only on the CS and CSR agenda, it has also positive impact on the business. So, in this way economic domain, which is about the real economic reasons why HRM and how HRM can pursue the sustainability agenda. Then comes the social dimension of sustainable HRM. When we talk about the social dimension of the sustainable HRM, we talk basically about two things: employees well-being and organizational justice. Employee well-being is about the health of the employees as well as the job security. So, HRM need to closely examine the job security related issues of the employees. They also need to take into account, they also need to be custodian of organizational justice. First of that is distributive justice, that means the financial rewards, the rewards being shared, rewards being given across the organization has to be justifiable, has to be fair. Procedural justice, people should able to see the process of distribution of reward to be positive, process of the distribution of reward to be fair for all the members. Informational justice, HR need to ensure that employees have sufficient information, employees have the required information about all those matters which influence their work and influence their working conditions. Interpersonal justice, that is about ensuring that everybody is treated with dignity in the organization. So, these are the social dimensions of the sustainable HRM. How social responsibility dimension can be integrated in HRM? There are some examples, there are some ways of doing it. Social projects in the local community can be initiated by HRM, and that can be given to the employees, and HR can act as a facilitator of identification of the projects and identification of the agency with whom employees can work on to complete these projects. Thinking carefully about the impact on poorer countries of operating through supply or value chain. In the multinational corporations, production work is done in different parts of the world. HRM cannot remain oblivious about the working conditions of the people working on the projects, working on the production activities related to the final product of my company, even if they are not even if they are not the direct employees of the organization. So, they have to take into account of what are the working condition of the people in different parts of the world who are helping in the supply chain, who are part of the supply chain of the multinational corporation. They need to take into account of the human rights issue. Human rights should not be violated in the home country as well as the other countries where supply chain partners are working for the organization. In the purpose driven companies, this may even include HRM contribution to addressing grand societal challenges, reducing inequality and decent work and economic growth. There are examples about how HRM is helping in addressing the grand social challenges. That happens in terms of by offering internship, supporting vocational training to the lesser developed countries, connecting the business goal with the sustainability goals. That is also accomplished through enhancing and investing in the quality education. Reduced inequality by offering career opportunities to women and the member of the minorities, and that is where HRM can play a very important role, by ensuring the decent work and economic growth by stimulating entrepreneurship activities, social innovation through cross sector partnership. All these things can be facilitated by HRM. Then comes the ecological domain of sustainable HRM. Green HRM practices are defined as HRM activities which enhance the positive environmental outcome. So, one way is by enhancing the knowledge, ability and skills of the employees, by providing the extensive training which aimed at increasing employee awareness of the environmental concerns which include such concerns in the recruitment and selection as well. So, this is first way in which HRM can work towards ecological domain. Second way is through motivation enhancing practices. We all know that individual incentives are very efficient ways of directing the behavior of the employees towards desirable goals. HR can play an important role in directing the desired behavior by linking that behavior, by linking the incentives with the ecological goals. That can also be linked to promotion opportunities, benefits, job security, performance appraisal. Finally, organizations must also ensure that they have the proper control mechanism. So, HRM can play role in facilitating the CS and CSR by doing certain things and by helping organization avoiding doing certain things, and that is what is included in the control mechanism. So, avoiding certain harmful practices, avoiding harm can be done by HRM in the CS and CSR domain at the economic, environmental and social front. On the economic front, they can avoid the managerial opportunism and excessive risk taking. If some manager is only pursuing the shareholder value goals at the cost of the stakeholder value goal, that opportunism can be checked and has to be checked by HRM, because eventually that kind of opportunism leads to the value destruction, not value creation for the organization as well as for the society. Developing a shared sense of purpose that guides the decision making to avoid short term perspective of making business decisions, that can be taken care of by the HRM through the enlightened performance management system. HR can avoid harm towards environment by designing the workplace based practices that increase recycling and reduce the harmful emission. So, HR can play active role and in increasing the recycling and reducing the harmful emission by the in the production processes of the organization. It can help in conducting audits to ensure the compliance with the environmental codes. There are lots of regulatory codes as well as non-regulatory codes related to the environment. HRM can take up those codes and ensure those being followed by the organization. On the social front, HRM can help in eliminating the child and forced labor, and that can be done not only in the within the organization, but also for the channel partners of the organization. They might be operating in different countries. It can help avoid unpaid or overtime hours. HR has to take into account these things and ensure that those things are stopped. HR can also help in designing the sustainable HRM practices like flexible hours, working from home. It can detect the harmful side effects of efficiency focused practices, can commission some of the studies which systematically look at the efficiency focused practices and their impact. So, these are the control mechanism through which HRM can avoid the harm for the employees and for the planet in the business processes. This diagram is also taken from the Toll, Brewster and colleagues paper which was published in 2019. It talks about sustainable HRM in terms of doing good and avoiding harm on the economic, environmental and social front. So, it gives example, for example, it gives example in all these fronts, like on the economic front, HRM's role in facilitating value creation and preservation, and on the avoiding harm, HRM's role in prevention of the value destruction. How it can be done, we just looked at in the previous slide. The sustainable HRM and its practice has to be done on the two dimensions, time dimensions and space dimension. time dimension is about ensuring that goal of creating long term economic value is achieved through the responsible use of resources. That is the abstract principle. Another goal on the time dimension is ensuring that carbon footprint is reduced in the organizational processes. Also on the time dimension is the goal about promoting intergenerational equity within the organization and in the channel partners of the organization, and that has to be done in the space dimensions of HR has to balance these goals, or we can say HR can achieve these goals only by balancing some of the seemingly contradictory forces. What are those forces? Those are headquarter versus subsidiary tensions. Headquarter can have one perspective if headquarter is in the Europe in a developed country, and if the subsidiary is in the developing country, how these goals can be matched, how these goals can be balanced, that is first tension. The second tension is balancing global versus local needs. Global market, global standard can be of some level, but local conditions may not be easy for organization to achieve those standards. HRM has to find ways, has to be partner with the business in achieving those goals at the local level, which is in line with the best global standards. This is not easy, but that should be the objective of the HRM function. Developed market versus emerging market perspective, that keeps coming. Developed markets naturally have social security, naturally have certain environmental laws being followed by other players. They have availability of some of the resources, some of the basic resources like water or clean air, that may not be even possible in some of the emerging market perspective. So how to ensure these standards in the functioning, while functioning in the emerging market, is not an easy thing, it is a challenge, but that is the next level of challenge for the HRM, and HRM has to gear up, HRM has to partner with the business to achieve these challenges. This is not only a challenge for HR, this is a challenge for the business leaders, this is the challenge for the business operations people, in the production people, MIS people, this is challenge for everybody, but this is important challenge because by our ability to address these challenge, the based on our so our ability to address this challenge is directly proportional to the sustenance of the human race on the planet, because we are already operating on the edges, the earth carrying capacity, environmental degradation, inequality have all are already there at a stage which is not sustainable for any human race on any planet. So that these are the grand challenges, business organizations have to gear up for that, and HRM has to be aware of these challenges and help businesses to address these challenges. So HRM has to move beyond the compliance orientation, instrument orientation, and has to help organization and has to look at their role as a mission led or value driven perspective, and that is the paradigmatic shift required for the HRM to be really a partner for the development of the business organizations, which in turn help in developing the human race and preventing the human race on the planet. I will end this session with a survey result by Edelman. This is a famous agency, they conduct the trust surveys every year. In the 2009 survey globally, they found that 47% people trust across governments, and 47 people trust the governments to address the major challenges, and more than 70% people trust the business organizations to address these challenges. Media, out of politics, business, media, media is the least trusted institution, but another important thing from the business organization's perspective is that 3 out of 4 respondents agree that company can take action to both increase profits and improve economic as well as the social conditions in the community. And 76% people say that CEO should take the lead on change rather than waiting for governments to impose it. So, this trust survey also suggests that society is looking up to business to be the agent for positive change on the planet, and HRM need to gear up, need to partner the business organizations and business leader to achieve this change, which can take the human civilization towards more sustainable future.